Hey everyone, it's Shrimpologist, and these are a few things to consider if your shrimp are dying. Now, one of the first things we want to think about is how many of our shrimp are actually dying. Sometimes we can be a little bit hysterical and convince ourselves that we're having a colony collapse when we see a single dead shrimp. Shrimp can die for seemingly no reason, and obviously nothing happens for no reason, but it might be something like bad genetics or birth defects or some other, unknowable reason, just a one-off death. And if you've only lost a single shrimp, you likely don't have anything to worry about. Even the most experienced shrimp breeders on the planet have shrimp die at random. So if you see a few shrimp every day, or you notice a massive die-off, now you have something you definitely need to worry about, and you want to start taking steps to identify and address, and I'll talk about that. Alright, so once we've identified the number of deaths that we actually have, we want to ask ourselves, how old is this tank? How much algae is there? How much biofilm is there? A lot of the time that, much newer shrimp keepers have shrimp dying, it all boils down to the fact that the tank is brand new, it's probably not cycled, and there's not enough algae, biofilm, and beneficial bacteria in there. So if you're watching this video and you're not familiar with a tank cycle, that's probably something you're going to want to look into. That goes a little beyond the scope of this video, but in general, you want to make sure that your tank is aged, it's had time to mature. But it's also worth noting that if you've just introduced these shrimp, a lot of the time the death is related to either improper acclimation or just the stress from being shipped and purchased. Maybe you bought them from the store, drove them home, they're jostling around in the bag. All of that is very stressful for shrimp. So that's definitely something worth considering. But if that doesn't apply to you, let's move on to the next step. So the next step is probably going to come as a surprise to nobody, and that's that we want to test our water. Now we can do this either using test strips, or what I recommend is a liquid drop test kit. Although these are expensive, you might not be able to afford one. Just use what you can get your hands on. What we're looking for is primarily pH, ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. Now if we have any ammonia in the tank, we can almost be certain that that's what's causing the issue, and the same applies to nitrites. Now when it comes to nitrates, this is actually heavily debated. The level that's acceptable. Me personally, I just keep my tanks below 20 parts per million. And then when it comes to pH, you're not looking for the specific value unless it's something, extreme. If it's higher than 8.2 or lower than 6.5, this might be contributing to the problem. But in general with pH, it's the same way we think about temperature. We're more worried about parameter swings than actual values. So if you've tested your water and you find that these things are testing normally, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so now that we've determined that our tank is mature, we're having a significant number of deaths, and our water is testing fairly normally, now we need to start thinking about things that have happened over the last few hours or even days. So a few things that you might want to ask yourself is, did you do a large water change recently? Did you open a window near the tank and cause a temperature swing? Did you lose power? Did you come home from your job as a mechanic and reach into the tank to adjust a piece of driftwood and turns out you had oil on your hands? Maybe you used a new fish medication or a different kind of fertilizer without being aware that it has a lethal dose of copper in it. There are too many of these situations to, list out in a single video, but take the time to sit down and really think about every single time you've interacted with your tank over the last few days. Did you just do dishes and put your hands with dish soap into the tank? It's all these things that could have happened. Did your neighbor treat for, pest control? Whatever it is. So that's the next step I would take if I was having a bunch of die-offs. Now this video is certainly not going to list every potential issue that there is, but the last thing I want to talk about is molting issues, because these are extremely common. Unfortunately, a lot of the time when our shrimp die, even of old age, it's because of an unsuccessful molt. But if you notice that a bunch of the shrimp in your tank that are dying have a white ring around, essentially between the middle of the back and the head, this could very likely be because your GH or KH is out of whack. Essentially, the water either has too many dissolved minerals or not enough dissolved minerals. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to get too much into the specifics of GH and KH, but in general, you are going to want to test these levels and then adjust accordingly. Now, in general, I recommend between GH of 6 and 10 for cherry shrimp or Neocaridina shrimp, and a KH of probably 3 to 6 has always worked for me. Like I've said in previous videos, the acceptable range is insane. People have successfully kept them at like a GH of 20. But in my experience, I try to keep it, as simple as I can for myself, and that's about where I keep it. And I have successful molting just about all the time. Obviously, there's some exceptions. Every once in a while, we lose one-off shrimp. That happens to the best of us, but this is where I keep it. So, if there's anything I didn't mention in this video, you're still confused, you're still losing your shrimp, please feel free to comment down below. I'll do everything I can to help you because I know how stressful it can be. I'm sure there's other people in the comments who'd be happy to help you as well. Hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. But either way, thank you so much for watching. I really hope I helped solve your problem. Please leave a like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching. Happy shrimp keeping.